Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the latest in the Edge webinar series where we'll be taking a look at the Edge's concrete module. I'm Dave Chapman, and I'm the sales director here at the Edge. Let's go to the next slide. Here's my contact information, so if you have any questions after the webinar and would like to talk, just give me a buzz or shoot me an email. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping issues. Everyone's on mute, but you can type any questions that you might have in the chat and I'll answer what I can at the end. Also, everybody will get a copy of this recording later. We have both existing and non-existing clients on our call today, so I'm going to go over some background about the Edge before we jump into the demonstration of the concrete module. All right, for those who don't know us, the Edge has been around for 38 years, providing estimating software for trades like roofing, interiors, drywall, acoustical, painting, and fireproofing, to name a few. One of the things that sets us apart is that we're an all-in-one software that combines both takeoff and estimating. This saves time, eliminates errors from going from, say, a takeoff program and then into a different program for your estimates, like a spreadsheet or something like that. The Edge has evolved over the years, mostly by taking input from our customers, the contractors or the users themselves. We've added new features, things like smart labor, where you can auto-calculate your production rates based on different criteria. We have multiple bid options and change orders possible inside of the Edge. We have a feature that I'll go over during the demonstration called Vendor Quote, where you can request pricing from vendors, compare them, and import them automatically into your bid. We also have a plugin program called Edge on Site. Basically, it's an iPad app that extends the power of the Edge and the takeoff right onto the job site, so you can track what's physically been done back against your estimate and forecast if you're on time, if you're falling behind, things like that. All right, we also have a plugin called Edge Smart Takeoff, where you can use AI technology to do takeoffs and tie those directly into conditions inside of the Edge. This was going to be a game changer, and if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. All right, so let's talk about the new concrete database. We've had enough customers that also did concrete over the years that they've been asking us to create something specifically for concrete. It's been a long time. We've been building this with a few of our customers for the last 2 years. We've gone through the beta process. It's now in general release and people are starting to use it already. It is specifically for structural concrete, things like estimating for footings, slabs, beams, columns, stairs, things of that sort. Just to reiterate some of the cool features that I'll be showing you today is how it's an all-in-one combined takeoff and estimating software. We'll get into the database and how it's been built specifically for concrete. But we'll go into some cloud reports and how we integrate with some of the accounting software, specifically our parent company, Foundation. All right, so let's just jump right into the estimate and show you what the Edge looks like. So I'm going to start from the very beginning here, where we actually just log on. Each user of the Edge gets a unique login with their own permissions of what they can do inside of the program. Okay, so what this is going to do is access our license databases, and if you have multiple licenses, you can have them assigned to specific estimators, or you can have them be floating licenses that anybody can check out. So I'm going to check one of these out, and it's going to open up the program for us. And one thing I want to point out right away is that it says cloud and cloud. The Edge is a hybrid software, meaning it's installed on your computer, but all of your data, meaning your core estimating database and all of your bids and even your blueprints are all stored in the cloud. So you'll be able to work from anywhere as long as you have a computer with the Edge installed on it and connection to the internet. So starting right from the beginning, I'm gonna open up a new bid, and I'm gonna add any blueprints that might go along with this bid. One thing to point out here is that the Edge is storing these prints in the cloud. So once you've downloaded them to your computer and then you import them into the Edge, You could delete them or accidentally lose them on your computer. The Edge won't care. It stores a copy of them in the cloud. We accept most file types from JPEGs to CAD files to Adobe PDFs and TIFF files, things of that sort. So I'm going to come out to my desktop and find some prints to work with. You can load in a whole set of prints, or you can just load in the ones that are applicable to what you're estimating. All right, I'm going to load these in here. So this is going to be bringing them in a second into the cloud. You can preview any of them and say, all right, this is one that I'll actually need to be doing takeoffs on. So I'm going to add a page to do takeoff for that. And this is my foundation plan, or my slab plan. So I'm going to add a page for that. I'm going to hit continue. So now it's saving them back to the cloud, and it's going to open up the bid for us. All right, so here we are at the scenario level of the bid. I'm going to work myself down into sections and pages, and this is where we have the 2 pages that we've brought in and told we were going to do takeoff from. So I'm going to go into my foundation first, and now we're going to build some assemblies. So we'll start off with every new customer with a default concrete database of different conditions, and we'll build this out with you for other things that you might want to do with it. So I'm just going to add a few things. I'm going to add I'm going to take the slab off of here, but I've got a couple of footings on here, so let's just work with those. All right, so I'm going to start off with the column footing. This is a count condition. So we're going to come in here and tell it for each column footing, you can rename what the footing is going to be, and we'll just come in here and tell it the footing depth, the length and width of the footing, and by filling that out, it's going to autofill our form information. So it's going to give me 2 sides of 6 feet, another 2 sides of 6 feet, both 1.5 feet deep, and what type of form we're going to use. These little blue squares all are pick lists, and behind them you can build a list of different form types if you're using wood or if you're using resi ply, something like that. Next, we're going to answer about our concrete. What's our concrete PSI? What type of concrete are we using? What is the method of placement? We're going to be using a pump, specify a pump. Here we're going to specify the method of top finishing, and if you want to, you can also put in a different way for finishing the surfaces where the forms were. Okay, moving on to some of our counts. So if you want to have some anchor bolts that are associated with this column footing, I'm telling it every time I count one, give me 4 anchor bolts. You can also include grout and the grout forms if you wanted to, and you can include a mud mat if you wanted to. The size is obviously going to be filled out based on the size of the footing. All right, so the next step is to go to these tabs up here, and we're going to be looking at rebars. So we can specify the rebar size. Here we have different crossbars, things like that, vertical bars. But I'm just going to be saying, give me 2 pieces every 12 inches on center. The length is going to auto feed from the size of our footing. Okay. Next, we've got excavation. If you do excavation, you can specify the depth of the footing. And if you want some sides, like I'm saying, a foot on each side of the footing open, it'll pick the length and width of the excavation as well as the depth. And then if you wanted an angle of repose, sloping your way down, we specify that right here. And here we're going to specify if we're backfilling or not. I'm just telling it 100% site soil for backfill, but if you wanted to split it up, say 50, it'll automatically choose 50% of a different type of backfill as well. If you want to include a safety fence, you can, or you can turn it off. Miscellaneous is for other premiums that you might be adding into a bid. Here I have chairs, and I'm saying give me 1 chair for every 4 square feet of top surface. So you can set up vapor barriers just by saying I need 1, or say this is 1 square foot of vapor barrier or visqueen or whatever you want to call it. Come over here and tell it for every square footage of top surface. Okay, and you can create things on the fly just like that. All right, so the idea is instead of having this giant database of all these different sizes of footings, is inside of a particular bid, notice it's already saying the size right here. Is I can hit this copy and insert, rename the footing, change this over to say a 2 foot deep 8x8 footing, 8x88, right? And that's going to autofill our form information. Everything else will keep the same. Rebar has changed the size based on the size of the footing. Excavation as well has changed based on the size of the footing. And you can change the depth if you wanted to. Okay, so that is our count condition for footings. Next up, we've got our lineal foot condition, and this is going to be looking a little bit different, where we're just telling it the width and the depth. Down here, it's going to be filling out our form information, but notice this one is grayed out. That's going to come in auto feed from the actual measurements as we do our takeoff. Next, we've got our concrete type, any embeds, what we're using here for centers for anchor bolts. Here I've got my rebar set up. So lengthwise, I'm going to have 4 runs, and my lap is going to be every 20 feet. My bar diameters and my lap length. The lap length is going to change based on the rebar size. So if I change this to number 6 rebar, it changes to 36 inches on center. I change it to 4, it changes to 24 inches lap length. And here, change it to 5, it comes back to 30-inch lap length. Here, cross bars, I'm telling it every 24 inches on center. If you had any vertical bars, you can add them here. So lots of options for your rebar. Excavation is going to work the same way. Tell it the depth. It'll pick the width, and the length is going to come from our measurement. All right, backfill type. Okay. All right, so that's our lineal foot, our wall footing, our strip footing, and our column footing. Once you've got these set up for what your footing schedule calls for, you're just going to work out to your takeoff screen. This takeoff screen is all part of the same program. So it's not measuring in one and estimate in the other. I'm going to take this and just show you that you can actually deactivate this, or what's the right word? You can have it just be a separate window that you can move to a separate monitor. The edge, and ideally, is supposed to be used on a dual monitor setup. So it doesn't translate well in these webinars, so I'm just going to bring that right back over here. And first, we're going to set a scale. If you don't have a scale, you can calculate the scale with a known length that's on the prints, that I know that this is the right scale. So I'm going to first count up some of my columns, and we'll do the F1s as my perimeter columns. We'll get a bunch of these on here so that we have some data to work with. Okay. So it's just a matter of clicking. You probably can't hear it, but it's giving you a little tone each time you click down on one of these. I'm just going to go around the perimeter here. All right. And then we've got our F2 columns, and I'll measure those here. And you can actually change the size of these, how you want the fill styles to look. If you want to look like circles instead of squares, you can set that up. And we're going to count these up. Now, before I finish this part, I want to just jump back for a second and show you what's happening, because this is an all-in-one software. If I were to hit this little dollar sign, this is going to bring up the materials. As we're measuring, it's starting to add up the total cubic yards of concrete, how many chairs we're going to need, our tons of rebars. So all that's happening in real time as we're actually doing our takeoff. So, and I'm not going to do a complete takeoff here. I'm just going to get some stuff in here so we have some data. I'm sure most people now by this point have used some sort of measuring tool. Now I'm going to go into my lineal footages, and I'm going to do this wall footing all the way around. So you can measure in a segment, which is from point A to point B, or, and I'm going to make that line a little thicker, or you can measure in a continuous length where we just keep measuring until we tell it to stop. Here we have a radius, so if you like, you click the beginning of the radius, any point along that radius, and the third point, hit this little convert to art feature, and it figures out, so you don't have to click all the way along. All right, so let's just get some data in here. All right, so that's how we work with our footings. Next up, I want to show you our slabs. So we'll go back to our pages. I'm going to go to my slab plan. Let's go back into our default concrete database, and I've got elevated slabs. I've got slab on grades. You can also do things like walls, and I'll bring a couple of those in. If you have concrete columns or concrete beams, we've got different stair methods, and then some miscellaneous items like saw cuts. I'll bring those in. Okay, so let's first take a look at the slab on grade before we measure it. Okay. So we're just going to answer the depth, and you could have multiple size and depths of slabs. I'll say this is my inner slab. We'll tell it the depth and thickness is 4 feet. I'm going to tell it I want my forms to equal the perimeter here, what type of forms we're using, what type of concrete and method of placement we're using for that. And then here I'm telling every 24 inches, give me a plate dowel. We're not going to have anything turned on in rebar. You can if you want, but what I'm doing is I'm actually using mesh here. So I've got mesh, and you can change different sizes of mesh if you'd like out here. Right. I'm also using this miscellaneous area for things like curing, visqueen, chairs, soil treatment. And then back at the excavation, we've already got the depth. If you're doing a subgrade, you can specify that. We've got our excavation, what we're using for backfill, and if we need a safety fence. All right, so pretty basic, but does the job. If you're doing concrete walls, it's going to look a little bit different. We're going to measure it by a length, and we're telling it the width and the depth of the wall. All right, that's going to set up your forms, your concrete PSI, and then your rebars are going to look a little bit more detailed for your walls. So you set up your horizontal by square foot, your vertical rebar, all right here. Okay. Saw cuts, I'm just going to bring that in. That's just a labor that I'm going to have in there. And you can either have that be a sub labor or one of your own people. It's up to you. Let's jump out to the takeoff for this. So I've got an inner slab. Let's set up a scale first. Okay. And this is where, and I'm actually going to set up an outer slab too while I'm here. So I'm going to copy and insert that existing one. Call it an outer slab. Tell it the depth of that outer slab. Everything else adjusts accordingly. All right, so back to the takeoff. So we're going to come here, and I'll just work. I'm going to work on all sides here. I'm going to do not a perfect takeoff for the sake of demonstration. All right. If you wanted to get that outer slab there. You can always fix your errors as well. All right, well, we got that. We have some walls going along here. I'm just doing this for some extra data. Okay. Let's go back and do a slab up here as well. So just like we did on the wall footing, this radius, when you're working with an area, any point in the middle, third point, convert to arc. Huge time saver. All right, so there's our takeoff for this. I'm going to come back to this a little bit later and show you if some of the things you can do if you've won the job. All right, but let's just move on into the process of estimating with the edge. So now we've built our assemblies for each page. We've measured them. The next step is going to be going to our material pricing. So this is going to give you a list of everything that you're going to need material-wise. I'm also bringing in some sub information. So if you're subbing out the placing or the finishing or anything like that, you can put in the cost per cubic yard or square foot. If you're not using those subs, you just turn them off. This is also, well, we'll work with each customer to build a list of, we refer to these as general conditions, or things that you measure with the job that you don't, or things that you price on a job that you don't necessarily measure. Things like equipment, per diem, hotels, travel fees, tolls, stuff like that. where you can just plug in a number. But this is also mainly for our material pricing. And you'll see in the case of like rebar number 5, it's telling us it's coming from 9 different areas. So it's combining all that rebar or the like items that are being used in multiple assemblies and just giving you the total that you're going to need for everything. If you wanted to see where all of these were coming from, you could actually jump out and it will give you the names of all the areas that these are coming from. Okay. You can have some historical pricing saved inside of the Edge. You can update the pricing on a per job basis. A feature in the Edge that's unique is called vendor quotes. And this is where we can come out and say, all right, for these materials here, for these materials here, I want to go send these to a couple of vendors to get pricing. All right. And you can have a preloaded set of your vendors, tell it, when you need the prices by, and you submit these and send them out. Okay. This will then send them an email that they can click on. They can use that from their phone, tablet, computer, whatever, as long as it has a browser, and they can enter their pricing in manually that way and submit them to you. What's really nice is once those are submitted, you'll get a notification up here like you do with social media saying that supplier A and supplier B have submitted pricing. You click on that, you'll open up a window where you can compare those prices side by side, choose which vendor's prices you'd like, and if you do that, it'll automatically bring their prices into the bid for you. So you don't have to manually enter them, you just accept them and they automatically come in. Say those were the latest prices that you want to remember for future jobs. You can hit this little send to database feature, send those prices back, and it'll remember for future bids. Right? And so that's how most people update their pricing. Because it's a cloud-based system, if you have multiple estimators and one of the estimators updates the pricing, all the other estimators will have that new pricing real time. So big time saver. You could also set permissions as to who can or cannot send that data back to your database. So kind of important to control your data. Once you're done with your material pricing, we're going to go into labor. And this labor is going to be customized for every customer. You can be as generic or granular as you want when it comes to labor. We know everybody looks at this slightly differently. I have this one set up to be pretty granular where I'm going into excavation labor, fine grading, my hand excavation, column footings, and how long it takes to do each of these. And I'll just use this column footing form labor as an example here. I've got 2,936 square feet. EU is the estimated unit, is square feet in this case. And I can come over here and specify my crew size and how many square feet EU per crew day I can do. You can also do it per man day. You could do it per man hour. It's all a matter of how you prefer to look at it. We'll move these around so you can look at it multiple different ways. But what's happening here is it'll give you the total crew days. And as long as you have a pay rate for that type of labor, whether it's an excavator, it's a form carpenter, if it's the actual place and finish employees, it's going to take those crew days, the hourly pay rate, and give you your net cost. Your net cost divided by the square footage is going to give you your cost per square foot. And the nice thing about the Edge is you can price this however you want and look at it several different ways. If I said I wanted this to be $1.50 per square foot, well, now it's going to adjust my production per crew day and the amount of crew days it's going to take. I can even come in here and just say I want to charge $5,000, and everything else will change accordingly. The constants will always be what you're paying your people and how much you have to do. Okay. The Edge has some checks and balances here. You'll notice that this has a red bomb next to it. It's because I don't have any production rate in there for my wall form labor. So I'll come in there and the bomb goes away. All right. And if you wanted to, you can take all of these and set your default production rates by sending your production back to the database. It'll remember that for future bids. And that way you can have all your baselines in there. What's nice about that is if you have lots of estimators and you're reviewing lots of bids from a management point of view, you can quickly come out here, and if someone changed the production rate from what your default was, you'll be able to look at it and say, all right, someone sped this up 25% from what my default or baseline production rate was. So have a conversation on that. Maybe they're being aggressive on a bid. Some people will take this same concept and say, all right, for this particular bid, we know the job site's odd, or the builder we're working with is sometimes holding things up, so you can actually slow down your production rate across the board by say 15%, and everything adjusts accordingly. All right, so lots of ways of tweaking and getting dialed in with your production rates. Once you are finished with your labor production rates, we're going to go into our recap. And this is where we're going to be doing things like our markups. Here I've got some material markups, some labor markups. If you want to put markups on your subs or equipment, you can. We customized the screen so that when you come out here, it has your default markups for wherever you happen to be, whatever region of the country. But you can also add things on the fly. This is something like escalation. If you want to put an escalation percentage from when you bid the work and the price increase to when you actually do the work, you can create things on the fly like that. Labor, some people break this into supervision, workers' comp, like a futa suda, so get as dialed in as you'd like. Here you can put an overhead on your subtotal, and you can put a profit on the subtotal with your overhead. It's all a matter of how you prefer to do it. Some people just put that as one number, right? And you can change them on a per job basis as well. Okay, that brings you to your total amount and what you need to actually bid the work. At that point, I'm going to come back to my scenario, and this is going to be a check-in process. So right now, I'm working on this job locally on my machine. Once I check it back in, it sends it back to the cloud. Kind of same as like checking out a book from a library, and only you can look at it while it's checked out. But when you're done, you check it back in, and anybody else can look at it, and they can open it from whatever machine they happen to be working on. Okay. But what that did, I'm going to hit this little button to bring us out to our estimating portal. And this is in a browser. I'm using Chrome right now, but this portal's out here, and here's this job that we just worked on. It's out here in the web. You can come out here and you can start viewing any reports if you want to look at a drawing report, and we'll take a look at some of these stocking reports, things like that. This is also where you can export directly into Foundation, or we can do an export into a CSV file or something like that if you'd like. But also, you can also create your own proposals. We have a proposal generator where we work with you, you load in your default proposal, and we have a whole library of different data points that you can load in and have autofill in your proposal format. Things like material net cost or gross price, labors, the subtotal before and after, the total amount of crew days. All these things are data points that you can put into your standard proposal generator. Okay, I'm going to come back to the bid here and show you a couple of other things before I move on. So I'm checking this job back out of the cloud because I want to be working in it. Let's say after the fact, your builder or GC comes and they say they want to do this job in phases. All right, let's come back out to our takeoff. And I noticed I forgot to measure my saw cuts. So if you wanted to do that, you can actually measure the saw cut. And if a lot of them are the same, you just come out here and start to replicate those across where you need them. Okay. But now your supplier says you want to do this in phase work. So I'm going to come up here, and we have a feature called zones where you can come over here and say, all right, well, he wants to do this as zone 1 or phase 1. Okay, and we'll just call this phase 1. Then we'll do the other side of the building as phase 2. About phase 2. What this then allows you to do is if we came back to our estimate here and we hit this little plus sign, we've got phase 1 and phase 2, and we know the total cost and man days and crew days that it's going to take for each phase. And if you're working on phase 1, you can come out to your reports, go to your stocking report, and just get a stocking report just for phase 1 or phase 2, whatever you're working on, or the job as a whole. Okay, so here's that stocking report. Any report that the Edge generates can be sent into a Word, PDF, or Excel file. All right. Told you I'd show you some other reports here. Here's our drawing report. Okay, so this is going to be just for that one phase. If I uncheck that, go back to my reports and go to my drawing report, here's everything with a color-coded legend with the measurements. Okay. That was, next up will be our slab plan in its entirety with its legend. Okay. So all of these reports are customizable. We'll work with you during the initial implementation to get all the reporting that you would need. But that is the quick and half-hour version of what the Edge can do. Let's go back to our slide deck and show you some of the other sister products that we work with, and then we'll get to any questions that you might have. If you're not familiar with us, we're owned by Foundation Software. They're an accounting software. They also have a payroll service, and we have a time tracking, as well as project crew and safety management. Okay, so let's take a look and see if there are any questions out there. Okay, one question is if this can be used for any other trades or things outside of structural concrete, and the answer to that is absolutely. As long as you measure something, and let's just go out and we'll use the slab plan. As long as you measure something in a lineal foot, an account, or a square foot, you can basically create an assembly for it. I use these generic area, length, and count conditions, and you can come out here and name this whatever you want. If you wanted to be able to measure this queen separately, all right, you just come out and you can start to build your items here. 1 square foot of this queen for every square foot of measurement. If you want a material and a labor for that, you activate that. And you can have multiple things on here. We saw this queen tape. If I said I wanted 1 lineal foot of visqueen tape for, I don't know, every 400 or 100 square feet of visqueen itself, right? So you build these, and you could build assemblies for just about anything. You come out and you measure where you might want that visqueen. Let me go to my takeoff screen. Right. And I'm just going to measure square footage on there. Once we have that out there, we'll come back to our estimate. If I just click on that visqueen by itself, come to our pricing. Here it's going to be picking up our material for visqueen, the tape for that. And here I just have a labor. Wait for that to catch up. A labor for putting the visqueen on there. So, yep, it basically, like I said, as long as you measure it in a lineal foot, square foot, or a count, we can basically build an assembly for it. Anything else? Any other questions? Questions of just looking at labor individually. See. Okay, so we'll come over here and we'll say, I just want to look at material labor for my inner slab. All right, so this is all we have coming in here for the inner slab and all the labor that's just for the inner slab. Okay. So yep, easy to look at it individually or everything as a whole. It's all a matter of your preference. All right, I think that is it. So I thank everybody for coming and taking a look at that. You will be getting a copy of this recording But if you'd like to see a full-size demo or have any questions about any of our sister products, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much. Have a great day.